Slide number 158. This is the order, or the relative position of the parts, in which the various clutches should be installed on the shaft. Stop your tape player while you reassemble the operational shaft. Slide number 159. The last item on the shaft should be the C-clip, or the C retainer. Slide number 160. As we have seen earlier, our first concern goes to the engagement between the carrier return pinion gear and the tab cord drum gear. We want maximum engagement, all right. But we are willing to compromise on that issue since we definitely do not want any binds between the two gears. We remember also that the C-clip on the operational shaft is responsible for preventing the carrier return pinion from drifting to the right. Furthermore, we remember that the fixed point or reference point for this adjustment is the tabulation cord drum. We have already seen that it should be set so that the inner surface of the drum is flush with the front end of the escapement shaft, but that isn't enough. Slide number 161. It is also necessary to make sure that the escapement shaft is positioned properly. This means that you should apply finger pressure onto the indicated mainspring hub, which is also the rear end of the escapement shaft, so as to assure that the escapement shaft is positioned all the way forward. This we must do before we can use the tabulation drum as a reference for the carrier return pinion adjustment. Slide number 162. From now on, you should first go through the rest of this program without stopping the player. From that point on, you should get yourself a piece of paper, return to this slide number 162, and only make notes while we go through the adjustments once more. You can stop the tape player as many times as you need it. Only the third time should you perform the adjustments, but then using your own notes as much as possible. The reason for this is that we will first give you the adjustment sequence, and then we will give you some more details about the adjustments. Our objective is simply that after this training package, you must be able to adjust the operational shaft and its clutches. Now let us go through the steps. For the sake of a better understanding, let us pretend that these parts are all that there is to the operational shaft. The first step. By sliding the carrier return pinion gear left and right, we select the best tooth engagement between the pinion gear and the tabulation drum gear. Second step. While holding the carrier return pinion gear in place, we slide the operational shaft leftwards until the C-clip, or the retainer, black pencil, comes to rest against the right side of the carrier return pinion gear. Third step. Now we move the shift arbor indicated by the yellow pencil all the way against the shift cam hub, or the right side of the operational shaft bearing. Fourth step. Bring the collar, indicated by the green pencil, all the way against the left side of the operational shaft bearing. Once this has been done, the position of the operational shaft is set, even though the position of the carrier return pinion gear has only been limited by the right side, or at the right side. Fifth step. Now we bring the torque limiter hub and the carrier return driving arbor all the way against the left side of the carrier return pinion gear. It is most important that you allow only enough clearance or end play for the carrier return pinion gear so that it can rotate freely. The end play must be kept to an absolute minimum, otherwise a coil of the clutch spring might be pulled in between the arbors during the operations of carrier return. Such an occurrence will invariably and permanently damage the clutch spring, forcing you to replace it. In a shop situation, once you know that your adjustment of the position of the operational shaft is correct, because you checked it prior to removing the operational shaft, you do not need to make the adjustment of the shift arbor. All you have to do is to simply leave the shift arbor in its place throughout the process of removal and reinstallation of the operational shaft. Slide number 163. For the same reasons already pointed out in connection with the carrier return clutch spring, the end play of the operational shaft must be minimized. If we don't minimize it, the shift clutch spring might get sucked into the space between the two arbors indicated by the yellow pencil. Since we have established the position of the operational shaft by the fastening of this shift arbor, we should now only make sure that both of the set screws are properly secured. Whenever you run into a shift arbor with only one set screw, you would do yourself a favor by replacing it with an arbor that has two set screws. Two set screws definitely hold the arbor in place better than just one of them. Slide number 164. In order to minimize the end play of the operational shaft, on 13-inch and on 15-inch machines, we would use the collar, or on 11-inch machines, the operational cam assembly. Be sure to heat the flat spots on the shaft before you tighten any screws, because the set screws tightened on the round portion of the shaft will mar the shaft, to the point where you might encounter difficulty in removing the tightly fit components of the operational shaft. Slide number 165. Now let us focus our attention on the torque limiter again. The small bias spring has probably come off your torque limiter clutch with all the handling you have given it. If not, remove it at this point. The yellow pencil is pointing at the approximate position of the separation between the torque limiter hub and the torque limiter arbor. It is very likely that you might push the torque limiter assembly to the right all the way in order to minimize the end play of the carrier return pinion gear without having minimized the play between the hub and the torque limiter arbor. In order to remove this play, we must know how to use our tools, because the torque limiter spring is quite strong, and it makes it hard to slide the hub or the torque limiter arbor sideways when the spring is on the assembly. First, be sure that both of the set screws of the torque limiter are loosened. Notice that with the left hand we hold the Bristol wrench, which is in one of the set screws of the torque limiter. We're actually doing two things in one. We keep our hand on the wrench, exerting pressure on the tool from left to right for the purpose of moving the torque limiter hub to the right, as soon as it becomes free enough to move. With a screwdriver in the right hand, we turn the torque limiter hub top to the rear, so that in the process we tend to distend or widen the diameter of the spring. The result is that at the moment in which it is possible to slip the hub against the torque limiter arbor, the hub will slip sideways, since the pressure from left to right onto the Bristol wrench is there waiting for a chance to be used. Only after this has been done can you be sure that the carrier return clutch spring or the torque limiter spring will not be sucked into the space between the arbors. Slide number 166. The same principles which were used for the adjustments of the carrier return and torque limiter clutches apply to the tabulation governor spring. First, we must check the engagement between the teeth of the tabulation drum in the governor pinion gear. Once that position has been determined, we tighten the collar on the right of the governor pinion gear. Then we must again make the friction clutch slip while holding the hub on the left side towards the right. In this case, however, we must either turn the spring top to the rear by applying slight pressure to the right end of the spring, or top to the front by applying slight pressure to the left end of the spring, in order to make the clutch slip and to make the hub move to the right. Slide number 167. The operational cam assembly is probably the easiest assembly to reinstall on the operational shaft. In order to preliminarily set the assembly on the shaft, we may use either the tracking marks on the cam follower, if there are any, or the lateral position of the check pawls, which will always be there. At this point, please invert the position of your sound cassette so as to continue by playing cassette number 4, side 2.